Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, but life keeps going wrong? You pray, you work hard, you try to trust, but the silence from heaven is deafening. If that's you, I want to tell you a story about a boy named Daniel. Daniel wasn't special by the world's standards. He wasn't rich, popular, or connected. He was just a quiet boy who tried to do his best and trust God even when life didn't make any sense. One year, everything started to crumble. His father lost his job. School fees became an impossible burden. Some nights, Daniel would lie in bed and hear his parents whispering, their voices filled with worry about how they would survive another month. He pretended to be asleep, but the weight of their words pressed down on his heart. School wasn't any better. He studied harder than anyone he knew, but his grades never showed it. He watched as friends who barely opened a book moved ahead while he felt hopelessly stuck. Slowly, a cold doubt began to creep into his mind. He started asking silent questions in the dark. God, are you even there? Do you see what's happening to me? Have you completely forgotten me? He never stopped praying, but his prayers got shorter, more desperate. Sometimes all he could manage to whisper was, God, help me. But here's the part Daniel didn't know. God was already working behind the scenes in ways he couldn't see. Things were moving. A teacher at his school had noticed Daniel's character, not his grades, but his unwavering consistency and discipline. That teacher mentioned his name to a school administrator who was secretly looking for students for a small, unannounced scholarship program. Around that same time, Daniel's father ran into an old friend he hadn't seen in years. It looked like a random, meaningless coincidence, but it wasn't. A few weeks later, that same friend called with a job opportunity that was a perfect fit for his father's skills. Daniel had no idea any of this was happening. He was still living in the silence, still feeling forgotten. Then one day he was called into the school office. His heart pounded in his chest. He was sure he was in trouble. But instead of a scolding, the administrator looked at him and said, Daniel, you've been selected for a scholarship. Your school fees are covered for the rest of the year. Daniel just stood there, completely shocked, unable to speak. That same week, his father came home smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. God came through, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. That night, Daniel cried, not because his life was suddenly perfect, but because he finally understood something powerful. God had been working long before he ever saw the result. Those days when he thought nothing was happening, God was moving pieces on the board. Those nights when he felt utterly alone and forgotten, God was arranging people, timing, and opportunities just for him. The silence wasn't God's absence. It was his preparation. Daniel learned a lesson that day that he would carry for the rest of his life. God does not always work loudly. Sometimes his greatest work is done in secret. If you're watching this right now and you feel like Daniel, if you're waiting, confused, tired, and wondering if God has left you behind, I want you to hear this loud and clear. Just because you do unsee any movement doesn't mean God is inactive. Just because your prayers haven't been answered yet doesn't mean they haven't been heard. And just because doors are closed doesn't mean God has said no. Often, God is simply saying, "Wait, I'm working." Behind the scenes, He's aligning the right people for you. Behind the scenes, He's shaping your character and strengthening your faith.